Hello，你好，欢迎回来，Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on February 16, 2022. Again, I must do this quick announcement once again. This will be the last week before we take a quick little hiatus for the daily video. We will resume production in April, but we will be off and doing some behind the scene organizing for about a month. So hopefully that when we come back, we can bring you better, newer, fresher content. I'm not going to say that I won't post anything at all for a month, but I will try to focus as much on organizing what's already there as I can. Today, I want to talk about ice cream. Yeah. Now, it is a little bit crazy here it's still pretty cold here in Canada, so it's a little bit crazy to be thinking of ice cream, but time passes by really fast, and if last summer was any indication, this coming summer is going to be crazy hot as well. In fact, in California, it's already crazy hot right now. There has been temperature up to uh, uh, 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the past week. So yeah, uh, I almost shudder to think of how hot the summer is going to be. So let's talk about something that probably will be much needed by everybody as the weather gets hotter. Let's talk about ice cream. Uh, when we think about ice cream, we usually think of uh, its origin being in Italy. However, today I am, as usual, going to tell you ice cream actually came from China. Yes, I'm not fooling. Chinese people did invent ice cream. In Mandarin, ice cream is called 冰淇淋, 冰淇淋. That's Bingchelling, 冰淇淋. When did Chinese people first invented ice cream? As far as any official written traceable archive goes, it traces back to the Tang Dynasty. Uh, Back during the Tang Dynasty, so that we are talking about 1600 years ago, 1600, 1700 years ago, somewhere around that. Tang Dynasty. Paintings, poetries, and written materials from the Tang Dynasty speak of this unique dessert for the rich people called Shu Shan. Shu Shan. You can think of it as Susan, like the female name Susan, Susan. What was Susan? Susan was a combination of shaved ice and sticky rice and sugar mixture. And usually people, of course, rich people, would have this at their banquet, and it's piled up very high, like a small mountain, like a small uh, production of a mountain scenery on the banquet table, and anyone who wants some can go and cut a piece off and enjoy it right there at the banquet. This was one of the earliest depiction of ice cream for Chinese people. It's about 1600 years ago in Tang Dynasty. Although there are some records that indicate that ice cream may actually have been invented in China around 200 BC. Uh, so it might have gone back even further than Tang Dynasty. Now, some people will say, well, okay, then why did most people say it came from Italy? Marco Polo, that famous world explorer, uh, went to China, saw how ice cream was made, brought the knowledge back to Europe and Italy, and it became very, very popular. The Italian people who later added more flavors and added chocolate and all those other stuff in it. And you can say they made it popular. It took ice cream quite a long time to become popular too, because for a while, the King of England at the time uh, paid 500 gold to the ice cream maker to keep their recipe a secret, so no one else would copy from them. So it was a highly guarded secret in some parts of Europe, including England. That was how good ice cream was. It was so amazing. And of course, again, we must stress that back then this was strictly a rich person's food. After Tang Dynasty, when the next dynasty came around, the Song Dynasty, so we can move forward to about 1400 years ago, 1300 years ago, somewhere around that. Uh, the Song Dynasty is when people started to branch out. Rather than just doing this early form of ice cream, it's called Susan, they started to put ice and fruit together. So they start to ice their fruit so they can enjoy frozen grapes and frozen watermelon, stuff like that. But of course, again, this was strictly for the rich people. In fact, for the longest time throughout Chinese history, if an emperor wanted to reward his subordinate for some well-deserved accomplishment, one of the really high form of praise and one of the better reward was to give them ice, give them a cart or two cart or three wagon full of ice so they can enjoy this extravagant dessert, the ice cream at home. That was one of the highest form of royal reward. Later, when the Mongolian people invaded China and took over and formed the Yuan dynasty, they made some little change to the ice cream. Mongolian people changed things up and uh, they put shaved ice with milk and honey instead of the rice and brown sugar as before. This new form of ice cream is called milk ice. So you see, like I said, if we go by official record, such as I have described, ice cream did come from China, and the fact that we can enjoy ice cream today have to largely be attributed to Chinese people and, of course, Marco Polo. Now, some people may say, well, okay, that's cool. Let's say you're right, and they did have ice cream back in Tang Dynasty. How would they keep that? How would they keep something like that? They didn't have electricity, they didn't have refrigerator, so how would they even be able to keep that from melting? Oh, you would be wrong in saying that they didn't have refrigerator, because refrigerator, yes, it was actually invented, at least the idea of an ice chest was invented by Chinese people also. Now, this one goes back even further. Chinese people have had their own primitive form of refrigeration as far back as about 2,500 years ago, maybe even 3,000 years ago. This very old, very primitive form of refrigeration was constructed in two layers. Now, if you take a really big pot and then you put a smaller pot inside it, and then imagine both pots it's completely sealed, airtight, then you get an idea of sort of what I'm talking about. The outer layer was made from mostly clay and mosaic, and this outer layer was called a faux, F-O, faux. Now, faux itself was a very interesting invention because traditionally the container faux was made to hold alcohol. It was like a beer barrel. It was sort of like Chinese people version of beer barrel, uh, so they could keep alcohol in it. However, faux was one of the very few containers, liquid containers, that was dual purpose. You see, when they invented this thing called faux, they had it in mind that they wanted to, and by they I mean Chinese people back way back then, they had it in mind that they wanted to hold liquid, mainly alcohol, but they also made it so it has many different little thickness to its walls, different uh, smoothness, different resonance to various area of this container. What am I talking about? Well, let's say if I take this, obviously you can't see me because you're looking outside, but I got a pot lid in my hand. If I take my finger and I start drumming on this, now, for the most part, no matter where I tap, it's going to sound the same because, it's a very uniform shape. It's round and it's the same thickness. Now, a fold was different. A fold have different thickness, different contusions, different curves throughout the container. Why did they do that? Because a fold, while being a liquid container, was also an instrument. People back then didn't have television. They couldn't watch hockey while they were drinking. So a lot of time, the only entertainment after people started to get drunk was they play music. Now, a lot of people obviously didn't have homemade instrument or they didn't have their own instrument. So people who served alcohol decided to make full also double duty as an instrument for people. Even today, a lot of time when there's a large uh, sporting event, a large ceremony in China, there is part of the ceremony called the thousand people playing the foal, 千人击否, the thousand people playing the foal, and they actually do. They have this huge version of the foal, and they have 1,000 people around it and everyone playing at the same time. And it's amazing the kind of different sound they can get out of this one instrument, and also they can harmonize with each other. It's quite amazing. So Foal have been invented as both a musical instrument and a container to hold alcohol about 3,000 years ago. And then people decided, well, let's modify this and we can use it as an ice chest. So they added a second layer inside. This second layer was initially was mostly constructed of clay, but later on was improved to be made of bronze. The inside layer was called jian, Jian. So uh, this is a little trivia. The outside layer is full. The inside layer was jian, and both of them would be airtight, have their own lid. So what people back then would do was if they wanted to keep things cold, such as ice cream or ice wine for the summertime, they would put whatever they want to keep cold, they would put the ice cream inside the jian, the inside container, and then they would put ice cube and shaved ice between the inner and outer containers, between the two walls of the container, and then cover it up. This way, it creates a very strong insulation. Like, imagine that people back then 3,000 years ago in China already understood how insulation works, And of course, in the winter, when they wanted to serve hot soup, hot wine, hot rice wine, and stuff like that, then they reverse the process. They put whatever they wanted to keep hot, like uh, soup, in the jian, in the inside container, and then they fill the space between the inner and outer container with boiling water, and then they put the lid on, and voila, this became one of the earliest example of a thermos that can keep food warm for a long time. Of course, that this whole setup, the pho and the jian, was not cheap. And in fact, for the longest time in Chinese history, ice, the ice trade, the people that could deal in ice, the people that would travel way up north and take ice from the glacier and ship it over China, it was a very exclusive clan. They were called Lin Zhen. They were the exclusive tradesmen, exclusive merchants that would deal in ice. Not everyone could just say, I want to go up north and get some ice and sell it. No, they had their own guild, they had their own regulation, their own union for thousands of years. So what did poor people do? The people that couldn't afford this pho and the jian and or people that couldn't afford to buy ice from Linzhen. Well, poor people had their own ways too. One of the ways was to go into the mountain and find a very nicely sheltered cave, and they would use that in the summertime to store their drinks and food in. Hopefully, no one else stumble upon it, of course, and that will keep their drinks nice and cold. I mean, if any of you have gone camping before, you know that even in the summertime, it get freezing cold out there in the woods. So imagine if you are in a cave on top of that, it would be like below freezing. Um, or some people would store their food and their ice cream or their drinks down in the well in their yard, on their farm. So they would put whatever they need to keep cold in a big sack, tie it up nice and firm, put a big coil of rope, secure a big coil of rope around it, and drop it down into the well. Now, those wells usually had ice cold water, of course, because they were underground. So that was the peasants' way of enjoying nice and cool drinks and be able to preserve their food with cold temperature in the summertime. I hope you've enjoyed this little, very trivial episode on ice and ice cream. And hopefully, if it wasn't strictly educational, at least it was entertaining. We'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。